How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. I feel like I've been awake for 15 days in a row, but
I
yeah.
feel like I've been awake for like a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
But
We're on the same vibe.
Yeah, Joey and I decided we're going to go disappear for 2 full days. We're just going to disappear.
Before or after Obsessed Fest?
After.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to see you there.
But I'm really excited for our guest, and I am really excited about the case that he chose because I have so many questions, so much to say. Do you want to introduce him?
Yeah. Listen, you cannot beat the excitement I have because he is not just, he might not agree when I say he's just a dear old friend. He's going to be like, I barely know this woman. But I'm just going to roll with it, okay? We have on our show today the amazing Kamau Bell. Hey, Kamau, welcome to the show.
Hey, we're dear old friends. I like that because I would like to feel more like that. So, but I like that. Yes.
Listen, I got to have dinner with you once, and I got to moderate one of your book events, and so that's it.
Mhm.
You're a dear
That's
old
it.
friend. That's just how it
That's
goes.
it.
But I want to start with a little bit of an intro for not a little bit. I mean, when I reviewed like your, I don't want to call it your bio. I don't even know what to call it, but the things you have done probably just in the last 5 years, I'm like, holy crap. But here we go. All right.
All right.
Kamau Bell is a stand-up comedian, director, producer, and of course, dad of 3 little girls. For 7 seasons, he has been the host and executive producer of the 5-time Emmy Award-winning CNN docuseries United Shades of America, which just phenomenal series. He has won a Peabody Award for his Showtime docuseries We Need to Talk About Cosby. He's the co-author of the New York Times bestselling book Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book. I remember that, however, your first book was a memoir with a very easy to remember title, The Awkward Thoughts of W. Kamau Bell, Tales of a 6'4" African-American heterosexual cisgender left-leaning asthmatic black and proud blurred mama's boy dad and stand-up comedian. I cannot believe the publisher let you get away with that. But anyway.
That is one of the best titles I've ever heard.
Ever.
For sure.
I always say I went to the Fiona Apple School of Titles. That's the school I went to.
I couldn't even get the title I wanted for the book I wrote about non. They're like, no, we're going with non-story. I'm like, that is so boring. But anyway.
Oh no, it was longer. It was way longer than that. That was the edited down title.
Oh my God. Well, recently, Kamau also directed and produced the HBO documentary 1000% Me, Growing Up Mixed. As a stand-up comic, Kamau has recorded 2 comedy specials. The second one, Private School Negro, is available on Netflix. You are on the board of directors of Donors Choose. I mean, you do such good work just in general in the world. And that's a nonprofit helps teachers raise money for class projects and live free, a nonprofit dedicated to ending gun violence, mass incarceration, and mass criminalization. And Kamau is the ACLU's celebrity ambassador for racial justice. Oh my Lord. And he's from Oakland. I am bowing.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite part. No, there's so many favorite parts.
Wow.
I mean, but that still doesn't stand up to your bio, Rabia. Let's just be clear. Your bio is one line. That defeats my whole bio.
No, like I said, this is like the stuff you've literally probably only done because it doesn't even have the podcast you've done. I know there's much more there. This is just what you've done maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, folks. This is not even the body of your entire work. I know that.
Well, at some point, the bios. What would happen is that people would like read all the things, and you start to feel like, "Am I at my own eulogy?" Like it's just let's just trim it back a little bit so I can get to the thing you brought me here for.
Yeah, but amazing. Peabody, Emmy Award, New York Times bestseller. What's next? The Nobel.
Oh, I mean, I didn't think I'd get an Emmy or Peabody, so I guess it is next. I mean, my cousin got a MacArthur Genius Grant, and so I feel like I would.
Just gonna say that's what I really want. Wait, what did he get it for?
She, N.K. Jemisin. She's a sci-fi fantasy writer.
I know who she is. That's your cousin.
It's my cousin.
No.
Like people ask. It's like we were kids together in our grandmother's house.
She's
laying
amazing.
On the floor she's amazing. But so I feel like she always stays. Like I won an Emmy, she won like 3 Hugos in a row. Like she's like so. In my family, I'm the one who's like, when's Kamau going to figure it out?
He's the black sheep of the family.
Yeah. Do your kids have any interest in like the arts, being out there, stand-up comedy, any of the things that you do? Since there's 3 of them, you talk about them so much on your stand-up comedy. I mean, it's my favorite kind of comedy.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, yes, but not as a comedian. I mean, she's fun. All my kids are funny because I'm a good parent, so I raise funny kids. But like
Ellen's daughter's really funny.
she's a singer. She's a singer and she plays guitar and piano and like has
Amazing.
performed at her school a bunch of times. She's performed at my dad's 80th birthday party. She's in theater. She's very much like she's like my wife, Melissa. She's like a performing arts kid. I did not grow up that way. I sort of was like a quiet comedian. And then my middle kid is actually like me, where she's like, I was a kid, I was just a reader, and I just sort of sat and stewed in the corner all the time. That's like Juno. She's a stewer. She's the one I described as Baby Hulk in my Netflix special. And then
It's always the
and
middle
then
child. I swear it
that's the
is.
middle child. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And then Asha, the youngest, is like, she's like was raised mostly during COVID, so she's feral. We don't know what
Yeah.
she's gonna do.
Yeah. Oh, those kids are wild. I mean,
Yeah,
also being a third kid and then also being a COVID kid. That's
yeah. No, it's like she had it. The funny thing about Asha is just this weekend we were out at the playground and somebody recognized me, as happens sometimes. And this kid she was playing with, who wasn't like we just met at the playground, was like, "Why did they know your dad?" And she's like, "Because he makes documentaries." And I was like, oh, "That's so crazy. That's I didn't even know she knew the word documentaries." But
Yeah,
that's so my two older kids would say I'm a comedian, but my youngest kid says I make documentaries, which both are true. I just didn't know that she even knew what a documentary was.
that's
But that's
amazing.
my
that's
job.
so
Yeah.
cool.
I guarantee my 6-year-old does not know that word. So
Yeah.
girls are way ahead of boys. Girls are
Yeah,
way
for
ahead of
sure.
boys.
For
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Well, you said you just did your first comedy special in a minute. What were you doing? Were you just workshopping some stuff? Were you planning on going back out on tour?
Yeah, I mean, my first stand-up gig in a minute, not a special yet. We'll see what
Oh, okay.
happens. But yeah, I just a friend of mine has a theater. She's closing the theater. They're closing the theater, and I performed at that theater a lot and worked at the theater a lot, and so they invited me back to like be one of the closing nights, and I was like, maybe I'll do
Oh.
stand-up comedy, and so I went back and I did
Oh.
52 minutes of stand-up comedy, and I know exactly because as comics we know how much time we're on stage, and I had like I took a picture. I had like 16 pages of notes. Like it was a mess, but it was fun. And I really still define myself as a stand-up comic. It just doesn't pay as well as the other things I do. So, but my
Hmm.
agent actually just sent me a bunch of dates to go on the road. And I'm like, am I really going to do this again?
Oh
So,
Right.
man.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we
What?
will be there if you go on the road for
Heck
I
sure.
would
yeah.
love to. I'd love to come back to this, especially I love the DMV. It's one of my favorite places to perform in that area.
Yeah.
What theater closed down?
It's a little theater in San Francisco called Stageworks. It had been there for many years.
Mhm.
It's in the Mission, and it's like a lot
Yeah.
of areas of San Francisco and Oakland where there's just things are hard right now, as they are in all urban areas in America. So
Yeah.
she just basically like didn't want to keep, independent theaters are hard to run because you are always trying to book a new show. So I think she definitely had a big impact on the community and did the work, and but it was just, I think they just wanted to move on to something else.
Yeah. Also, the Bay Area is so different from when I grew up there. I mean,
Sure.
my brothers and I always say we could never afford to live in the house we grew up in. We just grew up
Hmm.
middle class in Oakland, But
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, hope more comedy coming. So, Rabia, do you want to jump into 3 quick things?
Yeah, 3 quick things. But first I just want to tell our audience about the time that I went to Kamau's show because it was such a special moment for you. I have a picture of that somewhere. I'm going to
Oh,
find
do
it and
you?
post it. Oh, 100%. I have a picture.
Oh.
Got to come backstage, and that's the night we went out to that terrible dinner. But Kamau gets on stage, and this is at 6th and I in DC, and I'm up in the balcony with my husband, and I think you were wearing a hoodie, and then he
Hmm.
takes it off, and he's wearing a free Adnan t-shirt, and I lost my mind. I did
Oh,
not expect that. I was weeping, and this is when he was still incarcerated, and we were still fighting the fight, and so I was like, I'm gonna love you forever, come out. It was
it's
amazing.
it's so funny because you at that you were like, I brought you a free Outdone T-shirt, and I was like, I had to get one made because they weren't like readily available, and so
Yes,
it was a whole story about like at the
he
last minute, I was like, I need a free Outdone T-shirt so I can do it at 6 and 9, and so it
I
was
can't believe
yeah, yeah,
that you
yeah,
had one made just for that event, and that
yeah.
was it was so meaningful. I honestly, I'm never gonna forget that, so I love that so much.
Rabia, do you know what I need besides 10,000 hours of napping time
Wait, how do you get 10,000 hours of napping time?
and a vacation and a new
What?
car?
Tell me
Okay,
what.
I need to stop. CBD oil. The CBD oil is my new best friend because I have been using Nextivo Naturals for about a year now. And I had no idea that CBD was so different. There's the good stuff,
Mm,
there's the bad stuff, and then there's Next Evo, which is the great stuff.
the great stuff. Well, I mean, so Next Evo, they have CBD oils. They also have the gummies, right?
I love the gummies.
Okay. And yeah, my understanding is now I haven't tried it. I'll be honest, I haven't tried it, but I have been hearing for at least a year and a half from you about how it just completely changes like everything for you when you pop a couple of those yummy gummies.
Well, I always say it just lowers my shoulders because here's the
Mm.
thing. They have this technology called Smart Sorb, so it absorbs better 100% of all of the positive effects of CBD that are listed on the label, that are clinically tested, are going to soak into your body. And this is what happens to my shoulders. They go down. I get a brilliant night's sleep. I travel with Next Evo all the time. You can have the sleep support complex, the stress complex. Basically, the stress complex combines the premium CBD with ashwagandha, and that soothes away my stress.
And then the Next Evo Sleep Support Complex combines CBD with melatonin, right? So I'm thinking I'm going to see you in a few days. I might want you to bring me some.
Sleep better and calm your stress. Upgrade to better natural solutions from Next Evo Naturals.
Go to nextevo.com and use promo code SOLVETHECASE to get 25% off.
That's 25% off. nextevo.com. Promo code solve the case. You will love them. Rabia Lumi deodorant is back, created by an OBGYN to take care of all the odors that isn't just in your underarms, because turns out there's other stinky places.
There are? I never knew that. You mean all those folds in our body?
Mm-hmm.
They can get a little ripe too.
Yes, the whole body deodorant is the first of its kind. It is safe to use anywhere on your body. You got your pits, you got your underboobs, you got your thigh folds, you got your belly buttons, your butt crack, your vulva, your feet, wherever you feel like you need a little support in the smelly department, because an OBGYN saw firsthand how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and treated.
Yeah, people are like, I've got deodorant on my pits. Why do I still, why am I attracting flies? But the thing about Lumi is that it's formulated with mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. So it's kind of like a pre-odorant.
Exactly. And pH balanced, aluminum free, baking soda free, paraben free, and their starter pack is really awesome. I travel with a lot of the pieces in their starter pack. It's perfect for a new customer. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice. I like the mini body wash, and the deodorant wipes are a must for your purse or backpack or gym bag.
People know this about me in the podcast space, that I just like to smell really good. And I read some research from Lumi that says 12 hours after a shower, the average person has an odor level of 6 out of 10.
Oh.
Holy moly. But with Lumi, the average odor level is 0 out of 10. So I am Lumied to the max.
As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a Lumi starter pack with code SOLVETHECASE at lumideodorant.com.
That equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you visit lumideodorant.com and use the code SOLVETHECASE. That's Lumi, L-U-M-E, deodorant.com, and use the code SOLVETHECASE. So here's my question for you. Actually, I have so many.
Now I'm crying. Okay.
Oh. Listen, if you're in the area, I'm bringing Adnan with me to see the show.
Oh, that would be amazing.
And then you'll wear this T-shirt that says "We freed Adnan." I'm gonna get you one.
Oh, I do need one of those. I'm
sending you one. Okay, here's my question for you: NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys?
Rabia. Rabia. First of all, that's not how you phrase the question. The question is phrased, who is the best boy band and why is it NSYNC?
No, he knows what that means. He knows all the implications of those few words. I just need to say three words: NSYNC or Backstreet Boys.
Now, what if I go New Edition? What does that do?
Oh,
I would say,
you
would say New Edition over Boys to Men?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, no offense to
okay.
Boys to Men. Even Boys to Men would pick New Edition over them.
Well, I guess I wouldn't call Boys to Men a boy band. They're more like a group, I think, maybe. Because like Boys to Men, they are like legit. But okay,
Yeah,
go on, Kamau.
yeah, I don't think Boyz II Men danced enough to be a boy band. I think
I think
that's
you're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they stood in suits or sat on stools. They didn't do a lot. They weren't.
So,
Yeah.
so you weren't feeling either one of these guys in
I mean, to
sync,
be
or
fair, by the
Mhm.
time they landed, I had like aged out of like
same.
I was System of a Downing at that point. So it was really like it was really not for me. And but I don't have. I will say this: the level of condescension I had at the time has totally shifted and melted away. But like
Yeah,
I certainly recognize the power and I was on Lance Bass's podcast, so I think because of that, I'm gonna have to go with NSYNC.
love
And
it.
because it's just the facts, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
It is the facts. Backstreet Boys didn't dance. Justin, those boys
their
harmonized
songs were a
better.
little more heartfelt, though. To me, they were a little more.
NSYNC sold just as many albums with a third less albums. I will die on this hill. I will take New Edition. I will take New
Yeah.
Edition for sure.
Here's what I will say, because I had to say New Edition. My co-host Kevin Avery, who we used to host the Denzel Washington podcast, one of the many podcasts I used to have.
Love that podcast.
Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time. Period. I just have to say
That's
it.
the name. That was the name of his podcast. You always like to go with really long titles, don't you?
Yeah, I like long titles.
Also, Denzel Washington, what he won the Oscar for.
He won the
Malcolm?
Oscar for no, he did not win for Malcolm. He lost to Al Pacino in
Right.
Hoo-Ha, whatever
But
that movie was.
he
won the Oscar for
Training Day.
He won for Training Day, and
But
he won a supporting Oscar.
But should have won
Yeah.
for Malcolm X. He won for Training Day because he lost for Malcolm X.
That's exactly. Oh, you need to be okay. We need to start the podcast up because these are the exact kind of conversations that we have.
Don't Denzel and also Denzel in Philadelphia masterclass.
I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Denzel backdoor pilot, but like it makes me want to ask questions that I would ask if I was on that show. So,
good.
You don't have to do it now, but the big test is you have to rank your top 5 Denzel movies in order at some point. That's how you become a true Denzelite.
Okay.
We're gonna do that over text message. We're gonna do that offline.
Yeah.
But you were talking something about this. You were saying something about this podcast, and I interrupted with the longest title ever, and then I totally derailed you.
Oh no! So I always say this about the NSYNC Backstreet Boys. While I will say NSYNC because I was on Lance Bass's podcast and he was great, I would also say that this lives rent free in my head, and I don't know why. Backstreet's back, all right. That just goes through my head.
Yeah.
Regularly, like it just sort of like something about that. They really hit a very sort of like it bounces back and forth in my head. I don't know that there's an NSYNC song that bounces back and forth in my head. Like
that is true,
baby.
That is
bye.
Okay.
But their name's not in it. Their name's not in that line.
Do you want me to dance? I can dance for it too. Great question, Rabia.
Thank you.
Tag team trivia question, not part of your 3 questions. Do you know the famous female girl group to come out of Oakland?
Oaktown 357?
No.
Or In Vogue?
En Vogue.
Oh,
okay.
Really?
See, look at that. I had two.
En Vogue was like our bragging rights when we were kids.
No,
we're like, they're from Oakland.
Yeah. In Vogue is for real. Yeah, no, I thought you were doing, I went to like, I thought you were trying to trick me. So then I was like, well, no, of course it's In Vogue. I thought,
No, our listeners don't know that. But when we weren't recording,
I didn't know that.
Kamau and I were speaking about he lives where I grew up, and I loved where I grew up. I loved the environment. And I said that there's sort of an instant connection for people that grew up in Oakland and grew up in the Bay Area. So this wasn't originally my question, but what do you love about raising your family in Oakland? I think it's a really special place. And when I was younger, people really didn't know Oakland. I actually used to say I was from San Francisco because people didn't know Oakland the way they do now.
I mean, to be fair, when I moved out to the Bay Area, I was moving to the San Francisco comedy scene, but we couldn't find an apartment in San Francisco, so we found an apartment in Oakland. And all I knew about Oakland was whatever Too Short had said about it. So I was like, I'm good. We're going to live in Oakland. And then we moved to Grand Avenue, which you know, and it's like right near the Rose Garden. So we lived down the street from this giant garden of flowers, this giant park filled with flowers.
Yes, beautiful.
And I was like, I think Too Short lied to me.
Yeah.
So I very quickly sort of had the whole idea of Oakland as being this scary, bullet-ridden place sort of disrupted, sort of dismantled. And then it just, for me, I thought I'd live here for 2 years and then move to LA to do stand-up comedy, and I just never left. And it became clear to me that, like, literally living in the Bay, and specifically in the East Bay in Oakland, like made me a smarter person. Like it just made me like because you're running into different types of people. You're in different types of conversations. You're invited to all these sort of weird, especially back then. Hey, you want to come to my experimental music dance show?
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, you want to come to my burlesque? We're raising money for Palestine.
Yeah.
Great. You know what I mean? Like it's just all happening, especially back then. I don't know if it's that same now. And then so for my kids, it feels like if you can't like, you don't want to, the best way to sort of like, and I, me and Anthony Bourdain talked about this on his show, travel is the best way to open up your mind because you start to see the world's not about you. There's things you can't even imagine going on. So but if you can't literally travel all the time, it's important to live in places where the world is always coming to you. And where there's all sorts of different people who live there. And so we will be walking down the street and it will open up a whole conversation about something just based on something we see or somebody we see walking down the street. So for me, like it lets my kids know the world is bigger than you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And Oakland, if you're here, it's a place that will have your back if they know you're from here. If you, it is just a place that feels it is very community focused. And on top of that, this city can lay claim to like the Black Panthers, the Black Panther Party, and also Ryan Coogler, who directed and wrote the Black Panther movie. So that's kind of a lot. Like that's kind of a lot that Oakland has, and and everything in between, and MC Hammer.
You're making me want to move to Oakland.
I mean, the DMV
at least
has
visit.
Yeah, the DMV has some of that too, but Oakland, it's definitely you should visit. You should
the
definitely.
DMV doesn't. Well, yeah, it's not as sexy.
I always say I didn't appreciate Oakland until I left. I always knew I grew up in a cool place, but I didn't know how cool it really was until I went out and saw other places, specifically in the United States. And I was like, oh no, I was freaking lucky. I grew up in a cool place and, like art all around me, diversity all around me, social justice all around me growing up my entire life. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. It was so freaking cool. And now it's so freaking expensive.
That is the rub now is that it used to, the Bay Area, San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley used to be a cheap place for artists to move and sort of let their freak flags fly. And it is not that anymore. So I keep saying to my wife, like, we need to figure out where all those people move to because what we're calling Oakland is going to soon be in like Pittsburgh, California.
Yeah.
Okay. So our third question, which we ask the same question to all of our guests, and that is this. What is your relationship to true crime?
It's interesting you say that because I've talked about like the Cosby doc I made about Bill Cosby. I sort of knew that people would read it as true crime, and I know people like true crime, even though that was really just the Trojan horse to have a different conversation. So for me, a lot of the best true crime is a Trojan horse into a different conversation. And so I would say that I mean, that's undisclosed was that like it was
100%. 100%.
Yeah, like it's like
we were tricking people.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that like that's the best part of it is when it's actually like we're using this frame of crime as a way to talk about specific issues that maybe aren't being talked about enough. So for me, that's my relationship to true crime. For me, it's like if it's doing that, that's what I'm down for. If it's just let's go through the grisly details and have some sort of like Schadenfreude, that's not my steez.
So when the kids are asleep at night and you grab a bowl of ice cream, are you saying you don't like a true crime documentary is not what's going to grab you unless there's like some deeper issues to explore?
Unless I always talk about what's the frame around this. So for me, like one of my favorite documentaries of all time is O.J. Simpson Made in America.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely falls under the auspices of true crime, but it's about America. It's about like what is around this crime that teaches us about it, that exposes America to us or teaches about America. So I would say, yeah, I'm not the person who's just like this. I'm not trying to diminish things. This lady killed her husband, and we're that I'm not saying I've never done that, and I've certainly had those moments where you're like, I want to know. But for me, like when there's a bigger frame around it, that's what I'm down for. So I'm down to like I'm always down to learn about things that I had no idea.
Well, your comedy, I'm sorry, but your comedy is kind of like that too. Your comedy is a Trojan horse to talk about issues that you want to talk about. I think it very much is. I think a lot of your work is like that. Some of it's much more straightforward, but yeah.
No, I think that's true. I mean, for example, when I write jokes, if I can't figure out a reason to say it other than it's funny, it tends to not stay in my act too long. Mm-hmm. So like, if I can't figure out like, what am I trying to say? What do I want people to hear? What do I want people to take away from this? If it's just like, ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, that's funny, I might do it a few times, but it's not going to stay until I can figure out what is. It doesn't mean everything has to be about like, some sort of giant philosophical point, but there's got to be like some sort of connective tissue to it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like the case that this case, because when you look at this, the crimes that we're going to talk about, really the essence of everything is greed and how that affects so many people. I mean, it really is a bigger picture. So when you chose this, I was like, oh, I know why he chose this, but also I want to talk about boy bands. But the bigger picture is really what's important. So I totally agree.
I actually don't know. I'm not exactly clear on why you chose this. I'm really fascinated with why you chose this, to be honest. So why don't you tell our listeners the case you chose, why you chose it, and then we're going to give them a crash course.
Why don't you introduce it? We'll do the crash course, and then you'll tell us why you chose it. Maybe I guessed wrong. I made up a whole narrative. Maybe I'm totally wrong. But tell us what you chose, Kamau.
So I chose the Lou Pearlman, the guy who's like the boy band. I don't know what do you say it. The Svengali of the boy bands from Florida, from Florida. He's connected to all the and the dirtiness that's under that. That's what I chose.
It's good.
All right.
So we're going to give our listeners a little crash course. It's basically just a Wikipedia page, so we are all on the same page as to what we're talking about.
Better than a Wikipedia page.
It's not from Wikipedia, but you know what I mean.
We have people who think we just look at Wikipedia. Anyway, all right. So let's do this. Let's do this. All right. Today, we are going to bring you the story of a man from New York who spent his life chasing wealth, defrauding thousands of people to collect that wealth, breaking dozens of state and federal laws to keep that wealth, living a lavish lifestyle in Florida for decades while inflating or downplaying assets when it was convenient for him, and convincing others of his greatness to make up for insecurities that plagued him since childhood. No, we are not talking about a former president whose name rhymes with Strump. Although this man with his blonde hair, pale skin, and portly physique kind of bears a resemblance to him, but what is much more similar than their looks is the pattern of their lives and of their crimes.
We're talking today about the life and crime of once powerful and eventually disgraced star maker and entrepreneur, Lou Pearlman. If your teen years were full of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys concerts, mixtapes and posters, you'll have Lou Pearlman to thank for that, although the members of those bands may not exactly agree with that sentiment. Who gets the credit and who should get paid for the success of these boy bands is smack dab at the heart of this case. It was Lou's grooming and management of these two record-breaking bands that led to his meteoric rise as a music mogul, but also to the eventual demise of his career and reputation. Lou wasn't raised in the music industry. In fact, he came from rather humble beginnings. Born in 1954 in Flushing, New York, Lou was the only child of his parents, both of whom were working-class folks. Lou grew up in an apartment complex across the way from the now decommissioned Flushing Airport and spent his years obsessed with blimps that he could see take off and land from his house. Every day, Lou and his best friend, Alan Gross, would spend hours consumed by the airplanes and blimps on the airfield. They would build models together, draw airships, and plan for the day when they would be grown enough to own their own. Lou was lucky to have a friend in Alan, not just because they shared interests, but also because Lou wasn't able to make friends. People who grew up with Lou remember him as a chubby, awkward outcast who desperately wanted acceptance and often made up outlandish tales to get attention. One of those tales was that Art Garfunkel, one of the biggest artists of all time, was his real cousin and would be at Lou's bar mitzvah. No one took him seriously, of course, not until Art Garfunkel actually walked into the event and blew everyone's mind.
Decades later, Lou was still telling tales in his 2002 autobiography, Bands, Brands, and Billions, in which he described himself as a driven kid. So driven, in fact, that when he learned that only journalists were allowed on board the Goodyear blimp that he said he could see from his window, he finagled a press pass from his school newspaper and got to take a ride on it. After that, he said he hung around the blimp hangar doing odd jobs so he could be around blimps and live the blimp life. The problem with this story, however, is that none of it was true. It was his best friend Alan Gross who had gotten the school press pass to be able to take a blimp ride, and Alan who had become a regular at the blimp hangar, not Lou. And it was Alan who watched the blimps and planes all day from his apartment window because Lou lived on the opposite side of the building where he never had a view of the airport at all. While it's not possible to trust much of what Lou himself reported about his life, one thing was for sure: he was nothing if not entrepreneurial. With his famous cousin's encouragement, Lou tried his hand at managing a band in high school. In college, he came up with the idea to launch a helicopter taxi service, and after graduating, he managed to convince a few folks to invest in a helicopter, which he then leased out. According to Lou, he was a millionaire by the time he was 21, thanks to that single helicopter, but his real passion was in blimps. And so when he found out that a famous German blimp maker was going to be visiting America for his birthday, Lou mailed him a huge birthday card with an invitation to dinner. Amazingly, the blimp maker accepted the invite, and 24-year-old Lou picked him up from the airport in his helicopter. The German was so impressed, he invited Lou to come to train in Germany and learn all about blimps and the blimp business. After returning to America, Lou started his own blimp business, Airship Enterprise Limited. He didn't own any blimps, but still managed to convince the Jordache company to lease one from him to advertise on. He sealed the deal and then frantically had a blimp assembled out of old parts. The golden brown Jordache blimp, which looked like a flying turd to some, crashed the very first day it was put in the air. The accident made national news, but it was no sweat off Lou's back because he had the airship insured to the tune of $2.5 million.
Lou took that $2.5 million and changed his life. He moved to Florida and relaunched his company as Airship International and started a new airplane leasing company called Transcontinental Airlines. He fulfilled his lifelong dream of owning his own blimp hangar and convinced large corporations like McDonald's, SeaWorld, Gulf Oil, and MetLife to use his blimps to advertise. His demeanor was easy and convincing. He could talk anyone into anything without even ever being confrontational or aggressive. He had never been as popular as a kid, but as an adult, his amicable nature came across as charming. He was finding success in his airship and airplane leasing business and raised $17 million through public offerings of his company. His network had expanded into circles of millionaires and continued to invest in his companies and lend them tens of millions of dollars. He launched a new investment scheme that would allow people to purchase shares in what he called Trans-Con-Air Employee Investment Savings Account. Thousands of folks, many of them retirees in Florida, bought into the plan, convinced by Lou that the investment was guaranteed by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, the giant American International Group, AIG, and Lloyd's of London. Lou was loaded now, but he always had his eyes out for the next big moneymaker. He was starting to get bored of the blimp business, and he still nurtured a lifelong desire to do something in music. According to him, this was when a groundbreaking new band leased an airplane from him and he got his big idea. The name of that band? New Kids on the Block. And their global success was phenomenal. As far as Lou is concerned, that success could be easily replicated.
In 1992, Lou put out an ad in the Orlando Sentinel, a call for auditions for his new company, Transcontinental Records. It was a chance for young male talent to try out for the next big boy band. The talent search took over a year, millions of dollars, and hundreds of auditions. The rest was history. Along came Brian Luttrell, AJ McLean, Kevin Richardson, Nick Carter, and Howie Dorough, better known as the Backstreet Boys. The Backstreet Boys became the best-selling boy band of all time, topping 130 million in record sales and reaching gold, platinum, and diamond sales in more than 4 dozen countries. Then came NSYNC, Take 5, O-Town, and even an all-girl band called Innocence, which is kind of gross. It was official. Lou Pearlman was officially a music mogul. Records were selling in the hundreds of millions, concerts around the world were selling out, and the music hits kept coming. What didn't appear was the money, for the bands at least. For 3 years, members of NSYNC got nothing but a $35 a day per diem, although they, like the other bands, got to live rent-free in a house provided by Lou, with all other expenses paid for them too. After 3 years of working 18 hours a day, they were invited by Lou to a fancy dinner with their parents for their first ever presentation check. Given their phenomenal success, they believed they were about to get checks in the millions, but to their complete shock, the checks were only for $10,000 each. They could not figure out what was going on, but it wasn't just happening to them. Brian Luttrell of the Backstreet Boys finally started putting the pieces together. He hired attorneys that figured out that Pearlman had collected millions of dollars in revenue since 1993, but the band members had only gotten $12,000 per member per year. the Backstreet Boys sued Lou Pearlman in May of 1998, and that's when they learned that Pearlman was paid as the sixth member of the band. He was also the sixth member of NSYNC. In fact, he had all his band contracts set up in a way that made him a member, gave him ownership over the name and brand of the bands, and that all those expenses, like the housing, fancy dinner, and parties that the bands thought that he was paying for, were actually considered recoupables. The bands themselves were paying for all those goodies they thought Lou, their Big Papa, was magnanimously gifting them.
The bands won their suits and walked away with the rights to their brands and their names as well, and a judgment of hundreds of millions of dollars. You would think this would be the end of Lou Pearlman, but you know what they say about it's hard to kill a cockroach. Yeah. Pearlman was still loaded, still buying luxury properties and expanding and diversifying his business empire with purchases like a frozen yogurt company, TCBY, NYPD Pizza, and believe it or not, the Chippendales. Despite the fact that the entire entertainment industry, in fact, well, the entire world knew how he defrauded numerous bands, he still successfully launched the show Making the Band with ABC and MTV. Nothing, however, could replace the stream of revenue he lost when Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were able to break free from him. In 2003, he began taking out loan after loan in what some think was an attempt to pay investors, but the investors never got paid. In fact, many of them stopped hearing from Lou altogether. He had taken hundreds of millions of their dollars and ghosted them.
It all finally came crashing down when the state and federal investigations began. One of the many businesses Lou had purchased, a shady talent agency, came under investigation because hundreds of Floridians had contacted their attorney general and reported being scammed. Then a reporter began getting tips from Lou's defrauded investors and turned those tips over to authorities. As the DOJ started looking into investment fraud allegations against Lou, they discovered years of bank fraud in the hundreds of millions as well. The deeper they dug, the greater they realized the fraud was. The feds eventually determined that $317 million was money missing from TransCon's EISA accounts, those investment accounts, and there was $156 million in vanished bank loans. As U.S. agents descended on Lou's home and businesses with warrants, he himself disappeared for 6 weeks. Where in the world was Lou? Sightings of him were reported from all across the globe, but he was finally caught in Bali, where a twist of fate had him eating breakfast at a table next to 2 FBI agents who had been looking for him. Lou pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy, one related to the bank fraud, other to the investment fraud, but also pleaded guilty to money laundering and bankruptcy. He had conned 2,100 investors, most of them elderly retirees, out of their savings and pensions. And all those FDIC and Lloyd of London certificates that guaranteed their investments, they were fake. Not only that, there was no TransCon's airlines that they had invested in. The company didn't own a single plane. The judge sentenced him to 25 years, but seeing hundreds of Lou's elderly victims in the courthouse, he made Lou an offer. He would reduce his sentence by 1 month for every $1 million he paid back. Lou didn't pay anything back. In fact, he thought he would be back on his feet and made calls to his childhood friend, Alan Gross, proclaiming his innocence and planning a party for when he would be released. Whether or not he really believed it, Lou would never see freedom again. He died behind bars on August 19, 2016, at the age of 62. What he left behind mostly were questions from the people that knew him and even loved him as Big Papa. Why on earth, given all his success and wealth, did he con and hurt so many people? Let's talk about it. So, Ellyn, I'm 49 years old, and there's been things happening to me.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
You don't have to. My body's telling me, and there are things happening to my body that are telling me that I need to get checked out from a doctor soon. And you know how I'm going to do that?
How?
I'm going to go to ZocDoc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because ZocDoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. And they're all reviewed.
It is so easy. You can get a doctor that listens to you, that makes you feel comfortable.
That takes your insurance.
That's really, really very important. All of the doctors have verified review from actual real patients, not bots. That is very, very important when you're looking online. And the average wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between 24 and 48 hours. That never happens.
No.
Sometimes you can even score a same-day appointment.
That is what sold me about ZocDoc, because I cannot tell you how many times I've called to be like, I need to just get checked up. They're like, we'll see you in 15 months. Thank you very much.
Exactly. So go to ZocDoc.com/solve the case and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today.
That's ZocDoc.com/solve the case, ZocDoc.com/solve the case. So Ellyn, I know you have been using this service for years, which means you have caught some stuff like subscriptions you forgot about or paid for more than once, right?
Well, Rabia, she's got a very fun brain, but it's got a little ADHD. Actually, it's got a lot. So sometimes I'll sign up for a subscription. I'll forget that I signed up for it. And 16 years later, I have spent thousands of dollars. So
100%.
do you have those subscriptions that you forget about or that like you paid twice? Rocket Money takes care of all of that. Rocket Money's like tap, tap, tap. Hey, Ellyn, you bought 17 Diet Cokes at McDonald's. Did you mean to? Did they overcharge you? Also, you should drink some water every once in a while.
Also, Rocket Money will tell you, that subscription you signed up for $3.99 a month? Now it's $350 a month. They'll let you know.
And that is where they get you. Most people think they're spending like $80 a month on their subscription. That number is closer to $200 when you're signed up for streaming services just to like watch one TV show. But Rocket Money easily cancels those ones that you don't want with the press of a button. Sometimes they can even help you negotiate your bills lower. And
isn't that crazy? That's crazy. You could just take a picture, send it to them, and they take care of negotiating the subscription for you.
Everything is in one place. It can help you with budgeting. It tells you if you're spending a little bit more than you normally do. Over 3 million users use Rocket Money. I have been one of them for a very long time, and I love their service. Although they do judge my Diet Coke intake sometime, which I don't like.
It's okay because they're saving you and others an average of $720 a year. So stop wasting money on things you don't use, cancel your unwanted subscriptions, and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/solve the case.
That's rocketmoney.com/solve the case. rocketmoney.com/solve the case. Save that money.
All right. Now, Kamau, why this case? I really am curious.
First of all, I love that was great. I really appreciate that. I feel like I want to go, whoo, that was a lot.
A lot.
Whoo, Lou. So first of all, when you sent the list of cases over, certainly there were cases that I knew something about. And I sort of felt like I would imagine I would be expected to pick these amongst these cases that I knew something about, cases that involve things that I talk about generally. And I was just like, and I sort of felt like, I guess I should pick one of those. And then I saw this and I was like, oh no, this is what I want. What do I want to talk about? What do I want to learn about? What I want to hear about? It's this. So thing that a lot of people who know me in life know about me, I'm a big fan of white men scamsters. That's one of my favorite things. That's one of my so like or not even white men, I'd say white scamsters overall. That Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos thing. I've watched so many videos about her.
I know you have a theory about why it's always white people. Tell me, because I probably have the same theory. My theory is a brown person could not get that kind of investment.
That's exactly it. That white people can say crazy things. Literally, crypto is based around white people saying crazy things and then saying, give me money. And people are like, they're white. I mean, why would they be lying to me? They're white. They must know something. I don't understand NFTs, but this is a white guy telling me I should give you money for an NFT. White people get away. I feel like a lot of these scam docs don't talk enough about white privilege in those moments. That like a brown person or a black person going like, I've invented a secret box. It's in the other room. If you give me one drop of blood, I'll tell you the names of all your children your future generations of kids. A black or brown person can't get away with that, but a white person is like, she does have blonde hair. She does have blonde hair.
We can't even get investment for legitimate stuff.
We can't. We can't get a bank loan to open a liquor store. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's just the idea. So I love to get a mortgage. Yeah, I mean, there's any of those.
Ellyn was born with perfect. Yeah, Ellyn was born with perfect credit. We talked about that on our live show.
100%.
one of my favorite TikToks is I think I've showed it to you, Robbie. It's all these white people. I'm Italian, Kamau, and all these white people in like, Switzerland, Sweden, they're going like, we're all white, right? Yeah, we're white. And he's like representing all these countries. German says, yeah, we're white. And then the Italians go, well,
Italians had like 10 bad years when they first got to America, and they've never let us forget about it.
Seriously, Italians are going to go down being like, I know my people of color. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah. The Godfather movie made you think that you were an ethnic minority because of that.
We're marginalized. We're marginalized because you guys fuck up our food all the time. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. No, so I'm just like, there's the McMillions doc. There's there's one about, it's called The Big Con, about a white lawyer who took advantage of Social Security in the South. So just literally just last night and this morning, I've been listening to all these things about Sam Bankman-Fried, like another white scamster. I'm just a super nerd for that stuff.
The Lula Rich, those Mormons with the leggings, because more white people, and then a plus is if you're a Mormon or like really religious, because they don't lie.
The WeWork guy, Adam Newman, who tried to convince us he invented offices and office space. Like, you invented real estate? I invented it's a tech company. Real estate is a tech company. Like, and he's still out there raising money for other pretend things. Like, it's I'm attracted to white scamsters. Not attracted literally. My wife is not a white scamster. She's just white.
She's still sus, though. That's all I'm saying.
I keep an eye on her.
If you need investments, you know how she'll come in handy. Come out.
Yeah.
But that's a running theme in this guy's life, is that like no matter what he does, he continues to get people to invest in him. The same people sometimes for years and years and years keep giving money to him. After he's sued, he's able to still get MTV and ABC to be like, let's do a show. I'm like, it's incredible.
Because once you, as a white person, once you get through the door, and this is in the Trump thing, people assume that no matter what has happened to you, if you made it through the door, you have value. Whereas with black and brown folks, when we get through the door, they go, how'd you get through the door? And they start to figure out, how do we get you out of the door? Even if you earned your way through the door, you must be an affirmative action hire if you got through the door. But with white people, specifically white men, I mean, think about Elizabeth Holmes. She dropped out of Stanford and was not at Stanford for a medical degree. Was not there, and dropped out of Stanford and then sold a medical device that her advisor, a woman from Stanford, said, this makes no sense. This is not possible. And she was still able to raise money.
Did people not have a Google back then? Or I mean, like the fact she has no qualifications to be like making medical. It's just, but all she did was deepen her voice and dress.
And I love, you can watch the videos where her voice slowly gets deeper.
Yes, I know.
It's just like, I mean, and people they love somebody who feels like they love to call somebody an iconoclast who's just being weird. Like Sam Bankman-Fried. He doesn't wear pants. Yeah, isn't that a problem? I know. I think he's an iconoclast. Elizabeth Holmes, she dresses like Steve Jobs and has a deep voice. She must be really smart because she's an icon. So they love to like assign. And I think Lou Pearlman is like this too. Like all the things that should point to, this is a problem. This is weird. I should look into this.
The red flags.
Yeah, they come off as they like. There's so many red flags. It must be a giant. The red flags are making a giant green flag. Like, there's so many.
Ellyn, you and I are doing it all wrong with the sequins. We need to get some black turtlenecks and
we just need some bumbling like real like rosacea white men around us. You
just need to wear Ellyn. You need to wear sequins all the time. Like all the time. Like never not wearing sequins. Like that's when it's like she's an iconoclast.
You're right. Yeah. That's
with Rabia, it'd be like, we need to call the police. This woman's always wearing sequins. But
and she's got a hijab on. She's wearing.
Yeah. That's all right.
You're going to Guantanamo, Rabia. But isn't it kind of weird, the similarities with Trump? Like as I was like going through this guy's life, I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds like I'm describing like somebody else.
It's funny. I think that, as we know, there's more than one Trump. Trump's just the Trumpiest Trump. like that style of like, I mean, Elon Musk is a Trump. It's just that style of like,
Right.
I'm the smartest guy in the room because I have the most confidence and I talk the loudest, and I also am that if I keep talking and keep saying things, people will just eventually believe me because I'm a white guy.
Yeah, and a charisma as well. I mean, Lou Pearlman was a jolly old soul, and he was very unassuming. And it's like some people think Trump is hilarious. Like
Right.
there
A
are
lot of
women
people,
in
tens of
like
millions of people.
Schenectady that are like, "Oh, he's just so funny." I'm like, that's not funny, but it's like it's that like charisma too that allows people to get away with like Jeffrey Skilling from Enron. He could like control the room, and he just was like had random self-given authority, and people would listen. And the thing about Lou was that he was just a fun guy. These guys loved him.
But here's the thing, though. I don't think they would have loved him if he didn't have the money. If he was an actual used car salesman, nobody would be like that guy's got a lot of charisma. It's
Yeah.
the money. It's the money that keeps people laughing at Trump. It's the money that keeps people, because people like Lou Pearlman growing up couldn't make friends. I think Trump was probably the same too. If Trump didn't have all the wealth and the bling, he'd be a very lonely man. He had nobody around him. That's what I think. But I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think the rich guy is always funny if you're hanging
Right?
out with the rich guy.
You're gonna laugh.
Man, you're so funny.
Lou was, I mean, because you go back and the receipts of Trump have always been problematic. He's never really been cool or funny. And Lou is the difference was Lou was, I guess he just got in there exactly like Trump, just in a different way. Because the money, he would like splash out for their birthdays, and he was always playing with toys and buying them toys. Like, and I mean, that's a whole separate thing we can talk about, like connecting with younger boys.
Well,
But
but again, it's like you can only, what is the afraid? You can only con somebody who wants something for nothing. Like you can only sort of like, you can only like, you're promising people like fame and fortune.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I have access to that. So people start to see you in a different light than they would see you if you sat down sat down next to them on the bus and weren't promising them fame and fortune. I think there's so much of the rose colored glasses of like, and especially you're talking about kids and the parents of kids who want their kids to be famous and fortunate.
They're hungry.
So they're already sort of coming in with their guards down in a way that they wouldn't be if they didn't want fame and fortune, they would look at you in a different way.
I want to talk about something that's not quite related to the heart of the story, but I just can't get over it. I want to talk about blimps.
I have never said blimp so many times in my life than in that crash course. Those were
Who came up? A white man came up with this idea. We're going to create this huge, huge balloon that you can ride in. It's going to cost millions. It's put up a goddamn billboard just to advertise. Like, what was the purpose of the blimp? I never understood it, other than advertising.
It's like just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like I think, it is not the most efficient way to travel, I would imagine.
I mean, but we loved those when we were kids. Like, they would go across the sky and everyone would like stop on the playground and be like, blimp. It's like when you pass cows and you're like, cows. It gets people's attention. Well, when we were little, I guess we were just so stupid.
But isn't the only function of blimps really to advertise? There's just no other function, right? Like, am I wrong here? I've never seen a blimp other than a blimp that has like some kind of some company logo on it. Like there's no, like you said, you're not traveling on that thing. And I'm like, who came up with the idea and then convinced others that this is a great idea?
It was invented by a French engineer named Henri Giffard in 1852.
Why are we calling them Javards then?
Giffard. That was my French. But I mean, I think it was built. I mean, they look like they were built as like a gag gift.
Yeah.
They were like, watch this funny thing. And like all these years later.
It was built at a time when when human beings were like, how can we get in the air? How do we fly?
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it was. But then when we figured out how to do that much more efficiently, you'd think they would have abandoned the idea. But nope.
But they already made them by then. Somebody had blimps sitting around like, what do we do with all these blimps? I thought people were going to fly across the country in blimps. Which I got all these blimps I got in my garage. What am I going to do with them? I'm going to sell them for advertising.
Do you think, Kamau, that he was I mean, there's a part of me, I feel a little conflicted when it comes to people like Lou and Trump and others like that. The people who have like 8 million businesses and it just seems like they've got their fingers in everything. I mean, it's always a little bit of a red flag to me, but also I'm like, oh, they must just be really good business people. They're just really good businessmen. They're making hundreds of millions.
No, I think good at business is usually an illusion.
Uh,
I think good at business covers a lot of, if we're saying good at business, what are we saying? Good at American capitalism, and
mm,
usually a lot of that is related to resources you were born into and access to things you have because of your station in life that you were born into. You know what I mean? So for
yeah.
me, good at business, I Rabia, I believe I could take you today as you are and just put you in charge of whatever Fortune 500 company that you would like to be in charge of, or even one that you don't know anything about. And you could run a Fortune 500 company because I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that complicated at a certain level.
Mm,
I mean, we just had the strikes in Hollywood about the writer
yeah.
strikes and the SAG strike, and a lot of the things is like, why are the people at the top? If we can point to the mistakes they've made over the years with content and how they've run things, and this guy, one guy from one of the companies made like $200 million in 1 year, and you can't tell me how that he's good enough in business to justify that salary. I think good at
Yeah.
business is usually an illusion. It's just about how to. It's like usually good at business means like again, it's like he's charismatic and knows how to talk to people.
I mean, also, if you're making billions, number one, you're definitely not putting any goodness out into the world. And number two, you're for sure doing something, if not illegal, minimum shady.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I thought that you chose this case was, as you're reading it, you just keep thinking the more is more, the greed. I mean, so many
Mm-hmm.
things that we cover in true crime does come down to greed. People who kill for life insurance policies or people who kill their business partner or something like that. And this inexcusable, over the top search for greed, which I think is a huge, massive umbrella problem in our world, was sort of I put that on you. I was like, oh yeah, no, it's just because the more is more of it. The Weinstein, the
Mm-hmm.
Epstein, all the Steens, and all of
Mm-hmm.
their all of that excess, because you see what he had and what he did to people to get it. And it was like, you just think to yourself, like, why? Like, you can't take it with you when you go.
Mm-hmm.
What are you all doing?
I mean, I do think that, like we used to say with the United States of America, that every season there was like an overriding enemy that we were trying to confront, and by the end, it was like I think it's always capitalism. Like I think
Mhm.
the enemy is
Mm,
always so. I
Yeah.
definitely am attracted to things that expose capitalism as like I love Ponzi schemes. I love Ponzi schemes, and at the very level, I think isn't all of American capitalism kind of a Ponzi scheme? But I will say that like there's this idea that like I love things that expose the holes in the system that people like Lou Pearlman just take advantage of. The thing that I'm always confused about is like when you have the opportunity to disappear, why don't you just stay disappeared?
mm.
Mhm.
Like that to me, I'm like if I had gotten away with it to the level that he did, you wouldn't have found me in Bali. I would be ordering delivery. I would not be like on the streets walking around. I would be like, whoo. But I think there's the
You
ego
wouldn't
of
be at that
again.
buffet. You wouldn't be at that
Mm-mm.
breakfast buffet.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
they'd be like every day somebody comes and picks up this guy's meal. Nobody's ever seen him. I would just be gone. But I
Wait,
think the
what
ego.
country would you go to, Kamau? We need to know.
Well, I mean, if I tell you, then you're going to know I'm
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
But
exactly. Then we'll know where to find him. But
no, during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time watching videos of New Zealand. Like I spent a lot of time just
Oh,
because
yeah,
I spent a lot of
beautiful.
time just being like, it just feels like my friend's like, it's so boring there because he's been there and I've never been there. I was like,
Mm,
that sounds awesome.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
boring
yeah.
sounds great.
I say that about prison sometimes. But it's funny that you say ego, because the more I was researching him, the more that balance between extreme ego and extreme insecurity, it's a very, very fine line. That's where like narcissistic personality disorder comes in, because someone like that who's absolutely tying their self-worth into just abundance and
Hmm.
stuff and his cars and his Rolls Royces and all that stuff, um it becomes an obsession. It seemed like it became all consuming to him.
Do you think it's kind of like an addiction, like where like he's just trying to fill this hole, this void that he just cannot Phil, I mean, look, this guy had no siblings. His parents had died. It didn't seem like he had any immediate family. He was not married, he didn't have kids. It was just him alone. And having these like kind of paternal, but not really, because we'll get into his relationships with these boys that he was grooming for. I mean, I use that word on purpose, for these boy bands. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel it almost feels like an addiction, not an obsession, but a compulsion almost.
It definitely feels like when people, I mean, 'cause I say this about myself all the time. My favorite performers are the one who achieve and then disappear. Like they're like, okay, like I won the showbiz race. I'm done. Like I'm not like I don't need. And then when you see people who they when you can't stop, that's when that always goes poorly. Not always as poorly as this, but when you can't stop, there's always going to be a point at which you're going to fall in front of people because you just can't go. My time is done here, or I've accomplished enough. And I think there's something. And again, I think there's something inherent to the system that we live in this country that it says you shouldn't stop. And I'm not trying to give him I'm not giving Lou Pearlman any bail, as we would say. I'm not saying but I'm saying there's a thing that we create in the system where it's like, you can't stop because you never know. Also, you can't stop because you never know what's going to be taken away from you, but also you deserve it. You earned it. There's that whole idea of you earned it. And if you have the opportunity to earn more, you should because you deserve it.
Yeah. You mentioned the word Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
And yeah, there was definitely, I mean, the allegations against him in terms of, I love that it's called transcon with transcontinental, but transcon makes so much sense. All of his business were transcon something.
Yeah.
Was in fact a Ponzi scheme as far as the government charges were concerned. But the when I started like kind of looking into like kind of the history of his fraud, I mean, even in his memoir, which he wrote in 2002, well before like his legal, well, no, actually that's not true. He had some legal issues at that point. He had already been sued by the bands, but he talks about his childhood and none of it. I mean, like, again, there's no siblings to confirm it. The parents aren't around. Like, you have no way, except for this one poor guy, Alan Gross, who was not just his childhood best friend, but somebody who he defrauded. He's like, all those childhood stories were my stories. Like he couldn't, even his own story wasn't authentic. So it makes me wonder like what's happening in his own head that he couldn't even tell his own. And there's a lot of different stories. He talked about like this newspaper route that he turned into like this incredible enterprise, never happened. All these different things he said he did as a kid never happened. And then the blimp stuff, it was just disaster after disaster. I don't know if you can, I mean, there was a bit of a fraud in the sense that he's convincing companies he's got these brand new blimps and he didn't. And many of them crashed. It finally all came crashing down. But this investment scheme that he had all these retirees and like average folks. I mean, he had the investors who had given him millions and millions because they were millionaires. I don't really weep too much for them, but retirees who turned over their pensions and IRAs and all that stuff. He said that he called it the Employee Investment Savings Account, or the EISA. That is not even a thing. There's no such thing as an EISA account, but this is what happened. There is a federally insured vehicle called an ERISA. You guys have probably heard that, which is an Employee Retirement Investment Savings Account. So what he did was he wanted people to be confused between the two names. So he picked a name that was close enough and to convince folks that it was the same thing. But again, all those certificates that he produced to show to people that it was federally insured, that they would not lose their investments, like he faked them. And he collected $300 million in investments for those accounts. It's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, let's think about this for a second. What if he had just been a guy who started boy bands and paid them all equitably? He still would be like, things would have been fine. He'd have been a very wealthy, celebrated person.
Yeah, that's like Bezos could like raise every Amazon worker's wage $10 an hour, and he'd still have $1 billion.
Yeah,
yes.
He could have just been a guy who's like decided to. I like new kids on the block. I'm going to see if I can create more new kids on the block, and I'm going to pay everybody what they earn. I'm going to pay everybody equitably. And it would feed on itself, because once you start doing that, you become a mogul and you can do more of that. But he could have been, Clive Davis, you know what I mean? But he was like, but clearly It's about the scam. It's about getting something for nothing, and that's the part about it that is why wherever he was going to go, he was going to crime. He was going to crime because it was not about I want to make money. It's not even about the money. It's about the crime.
But that is such a symptom of somebody who has such a grandiose personality and wants to do something really great, but they have no purpose in life, and their whole personality and their whole self-worth is wrapped around money or fame. He used to brag about being able to get into these hard to get into restaurants, and it's just that thing. And when you think about the people who he really targeted, I hate it. Whenever people target Mima, I hate that. And but those call scams, when they call you on that's who they're trying to get in touch with. And then going to like kids and their families and saying, "Hey, if you just, move your whole family out to Orlando, I'm going to make you a star." Of course, a parent is going to do anything for their kids to achieve their dreams. So in a sense, though they're not like vulnerable like in old people, tell a parent that they can make their kids' dreams come true. That parent's going to do it every time. It was just like he truly picked on the most vulnerable.
Well, you also know a good con artist knows who the marks are. So I would say probably most parents aren't going to send their kids to Orlando to become stars, but there are parents who are going to do that. Most parents aren't going to go, yes, Michael Jackson, you want to hang out with my kids? Sure. Most parents are going to be like, I'll just buy the album. That's cool.
Yeah.
But
Right.
That's
But if you have a
episode.
child, who is desperately like just wanting a career in the music industry, is talented naturally, and just sees this opportunity, I can see. Listen, my 14-year-old is still working on me to get her to go to this concert in the middle of the school week next week, and I'm starting to soften up. So I can see the persuasive power of a teenager, right?
Yeah.
It's coming at you, Kamau. Just it's
No, I literally have a 12-year-old who plays guitar and sings and plays piano,
Wait
and
till
it's
she's
good.
15. Wait till she's
Yeah,
15.
and it's good. But you're not going to get me to send you to
Yeah.
Orlando. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Totally. You know too much. You know too much.
I know too much. But I would
Yeah.
also say, related to all of this, is that if you want to be a scamster, a good place to scam it out is the music industry. Because the music industry, not paying people their fee, their proper royalties, is what the music industry is based on. And the one thing I'll say about the music industry, where it may be harder for Black people, but they scam everybody. Black people, white people, like they are trying to take advantage of everybody.
And some of them have been scammed. I mean, some of the Mozart died penniless, of course, but like Sammy Davis Jr., Whitney Houston. I mean, some of the biggest, most profound and deep and most important people in our music industry died truly penniless.
Or the other thing happens where you see this happen a lot, where their first half of their career, they don't have any of that money left, and the second half of the career, I think that Billy Joel was somebody like that. Like, he got totally scammed, and then he's like, okay, now I got to really work for all the money I lost. So that happens a lot too. Yeah.
Taylor Swift. I mean, you got to re-recording all of her music. I mean, she was like, okay, fuck that, let's re-record these bitches. And
she's doing it like it's a revenge Western. It's really intense.
Listen, between Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and the Barbie movie this year, women we've been nailing it this year.
Coming for blood. Yeah.
One of the most fascinating things to me about this guy, Lou, and I don't know if the same is true for Trump necessarily, but it feels like it wasn't even so much that Lou had all these people had to do his had an army of people doing his bidding to actually like commit the frauds. Like he was handling all this himself. All those company, I mean, like he was it. For example, when he was convincing investors to, he's saying, I've got this transcon airline company with all the like 60 odd planes. And he took his friend's model plane and like faked pictures. So it was a model to make it look like it was against a runway, that it was taking off. And like the man did it himself. You know what I mean? Like he took personal responsibility for each and every one of these cons. He even one of his own lawyers sued him, which is insane to me. The lawyer wins a judgment for him. Okay, he's supposed to get paid, doesn't get paid. The lawyer sues him, and he gets a judgment. Lawyer gets a judgment of $16.5 million. That's money that is owed to the lawyer. Again, very Trumpy, not paying his lawyers. Lou says, I'm sending a wire transfer to you from a bank in Germany. Turns out there's no bank in Germany. They try to figure out like who, but as they're digging down deeper and deeper, it ends up being like this one secretary who's like, none of these agencies exist. I just forward all the calls to Lou. It's always Lou who's handling every fraud. He himself takes documents, forges them. There's one investor, and this is really actually two stories that I thought were the really terrible in terms of investor stuff. But then I want to talk about the boy band stuff. One in which there's this man named Joseph Chow who, over the course of his life, had given him like $12 million invested. He was supposed to get returns. He dies. The family tries to get back that money. And Lou shows up with a letter, and it's like one paragraph, and it's signed by Joseph Chow, and it says, this is a forbearance letter saying that if he can't pay me back, it's okay. I don't want the money back. Of course, the Chow family's attorney's like, oh, this is actually Lou's actual signature. It looks just like his signature. This man typed it up at home himself.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of like the Bernie Madoff docuseries that was on Netflix recently. I'm Bernie Madoff, so of course, if I like scams, I like Bernie Madoff's story. That there's a part in it where like the regulators are like, tell us the number of the account that we need so we can go look and see if the money's there. And there was no account, and Bernie knew it, and he just wrote down a number on a piece of paper and slid it over to them and walked out, and they never looked it up. This is years before he was ever caught. So it's like, I think a part of being a scamster is being able to look people in the eye and stare through them and go, I'm telling you the truth when you know it's a lie, and you know it's an easily checkable lie. But that's a big part of being an effective scamster is telling a lie like it's the truth.
Again,
and
white
telling
male,
an
though,
obvious lie. Yeah.
Only because he's a white male, he could have.
Yeah, no, the white man is a big part of it. Yeah, no. Yeah. When you're black or brown, you can't. You tell the truth and they say it's a lie. Like it's the opposite. Like I swear, this is my house. I live here. We're gonna have to arrest you, Mr. Gates.
Yeah, I've never seen this guy before. Like Bill, we've been neighbors for 4 years.
Yeah. One of his victims was, in fact, this man who had been the superintendent in the apartment complex he grew up in. Had invested like $100,000, which was like his entire life savings. And then when the son tried to get it back, he's like, it's gone. I'm not going to, $100,000 was nothing for this guy. Mm-hmm. And, the son ended up committing suicide. Mm. I mean, like, he was so distraught that money was gone. And he devastated so many people. But so let's get to the boy bands. Ellyn, I'll let you take the lead on boy band stuff.
So, boy band, he didn't, obviously create boy bands. We go back to the Beatles, we go back to Jackson 5, we go back to New Edition. I mean, there's so many, but that
I think Motown would like to have some things to say about the creation of boy bands. I just want to insert
who in Motown?
The Temptations.
The Temptations.
The Four Tops. Now I'm my mom's son. I'm naming all the
I love the Temptations.
The Shy Lights.
You could do Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Mm-hmm. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
Mm-hmm. Would you do the Commodores? Would the Commodores? Or they didn't dance really.
I mean, I think by the time they came out, you had to also play instruments and do other things. But yeah, I think that they were certainly. I'm sure the Commodores grew up wanting to be the Temptations.
I feel like. In terms of the aughts boy bands that we're talking about, I feel like Jackson 5 would be the closest because Jackson 5 sang, did harmony, and danced.
Yeah.
Because so these boy band, the boy band era, that generation was about 96 to 02, with the peak coming right about 2000, 02. Backstreet Boys from Lou Pearlman came first, and their first album, Backstreet Boys, came out in 1996. And so right when the Backstreet Boys came out, he's like, cut, copy, paste. Let's do this shit again with NSYNC, because Chris Kirkpatrick.
But he got the idea from New Kids, right? He got the idea. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, New Kids were. Yeah. And the New Kids thing, he sort of followed that model with like the really good looking front man and the little young boy or whatever. Creepy. We'll talk about that. And so Chris Kirkpatrick, oddly enough, kind of the odd duck in NSYNC, was trying to be in Backstreet Boys. And Lou's like, no, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to do this again. Control V. You're going to be in NSYNC. And NSYNC came out in 1997. And Backstreet Boys were like,
What are you doing?
So
conflict of interest, my man. Same manager, same formula, same everything. And it was just like the weirdest thing. And Lou's like, look at this. I got the two biggest boy bands. And they're like, yeah, we're the two biggest boy bands and you're fucking in charge of us. That's weird.
But it was kind of brilliant because he's like, somebody's going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
The only equivalent would be like, if my agent called me and they were like, hey, we just signed like, this other woman that I'm always against, up for. And I'm like, what?
If you're both trying out for the same parts all
yeah,
the time.
you're constantly going to be pitching us for the same thing. I mean, it's just,
I was going to say, agents literally do that. They just don't tell you.
Yeah, right. Who's your agent? That's weird. That's my agent. But, and he did the same thing. He would get them a house. He would buy them clothes. He would take them out to dinners, really nice dinners. Little did they know, he was like ding, ding, dinging their paycheck. And they're like, nah, you're paying for this house. You're paying for these dinners. And I mean, he sold them a dream. They all came to Orlando. Justin had already been in Mickey Mouse Club. Lance moved there. And they're like, we're gonna, you guys are gonna be like the new kids on the block. And they would have them rehearsing in horrible conditions. But listen, being in show business,
I gotta say, they paid their dues rather quickly. It wasn't like they had a lifetime. Like they didn't have like a very long. Yeah. Although I do, after like 3 or 4 years, they caught on pretty quick and they got their due and they went on. They were independent. They were able to more than I would say, out earn what he had initially kept from them. But I do think their careers. I mean, like this all kind of happened at a time when the boy band craze was kind of dying out too. Right. It seemed like that was happening. And
no, it went from like 96 to 02 and it like peaked there with like the No Strings Attached album. But, they were like, hey, we're taking a train to Schenectady. We're going to get up. We're going to play at the Mall of America at noon. Then we're going to take a bus over to Sheboygan and we're going to play the old folks home. I mean, they literally
worked their asses off. Yeah.
And seriously, malls. Britney Spears did the same thing. I mean, listen, it's not like mining coal or anything like that, but it was kind of the ass end of show business for a while, and then like touring, being in a new country all the time.
And then being around this creep. Can we talk about the allegations of the fact that it seemed like he might have been a sexual predator as well?
Yes, that too. Also, Rabia, we know what it's like to work and not get paid.
Oh yeah, we've been there.
We're
there right now.
We didn't work as hard as NSYNC, but we still didn't.
I don't know if you've heard Kamau. There's been a little bit of a kerfuffle in the podcast industry,
the podcasting world.
Oh no, yeah. I've read the headlines.
Yeah. That's all you need to know.
Well, tell them about the allegations. Kamau, have you heard about this stuff?
Yeah, that he was not. That I hate to say. When grown adult men want to spend a lot of time with children, you have to sort of start to be a little bit like, let me just keep an eye on this. And let me just, that's where the parent in me comes in. Like, you want me to send my child to where to hang out with who? I think I'm going to have to pass on this opportunity. Thank you for the interest though.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was very handsy, very touchy feely, showed up a number of times, got his clothes on, would wrestle the boys, would give them massages, including massaging their abs. That should not be a thing. That's not a thing. Nobody massages their abs. And then, there's also more serious allegations but folks who were kind of in the periphery of this were like, listen, these folks are not going to, like, these kids are, as they become adults, they're just never going to come forward.
Yeah.
Nick Carter, apparently, like something happened, Nick was part of Backstreet Boys and he was very close to Big Papa, as they called him. And suddenly like this flip switched, according to his mom. And she's like, he just would not go near him. Maybe something took place there. And then he had a personal assistant who he saw at a mall, and it's like a good looking young man. And he basically said to the assistant, look, that assistant wanted a break in the music industry. He didn't want to be his assistant. He wanted to sing. And he's like, you can, if you give me some sexual favors. And he said, no. So this guy, not a great guy. Not a great guy. I wanted to ask you this, Kamau. You have spent your entire career, almost, I think your entire career in the entertainment world. I'm wondering about his defense was that, look, my concept, I recruited and I created the bands, I got them the record deals, I assumed all the risk. It's like if I have a business, okay? It's
Yeah,
like if I have
yeah,
a business and these are all my
yeah.
employees, they're my employees, but the business is mine. Just because the employees work their asses off for donuts, for nothing,
Mhm,
doesn't mean they have ownership of this. And I think also about how like TV and film is made, right? Like
mhm,
writers don't own what they write, actors don't
mhm.
own what they're act, right? I mean, like networks own it. I mean, so it seems like, I'm not saying he was right, but I'm like, he did have an argument there.
I would say it's the same, but it's the same argument behind the transatlantic slave trade. Like it's the same.
There you
Like
go.
you do
Yeah.
the work. You do all the work. I take the lion's share of the profits, or all the
Yeah.
profits
All the
in the
profits. Yeah.
transatlantic. I'm not going to count room and board as profits. But yeah, so it's the same argument. Again, it's the American capitalism argument that like there's a difference between like I mean it's just the way that we think owner means should have not only the most money but the lion's share of the money, which is just a broken way to think about things. So and especially when things become more and more that direction. Like so the way the music industry has worked into a show business, people get taken advantage more and more as the system goes on. Like, and then people every now and again, like with the union, they start up and they go, no, we're going to band together and demand more. And then the industry figures out a way. Okay, now that you've done that, how can we figure out a way to get our share back? So I think that the idea
Mm,
being that just because you're the owner, there's no reason. If again, to sort of say what Ellyn said, when American society creates billionaires, people are getting screwed below them. People are getting
mm.
screwed out. That means there's
It's not
people below those
possible
people.
unless,
Yeah,
right.
unless somebody's
Right.
not getting paid
Yeah.
their fair share. And I mean, even the fact that like, you can say, well, I paid them and it was my idea. Yeah, but who's doing the work? And if they disappear, can you go do what they did? Can Lou Pearlman? I know you signed yourself up
Yeah.
as a sixth member of NSYNC, but can you, if NSYNC is booked and they don't show up and you show up, is that going to be? Are people going,
Right.
yay, close? This is the sixth member of NSYNC. It's fine, everybody. Is that going to be
Right.
how it works?
Right.
Yeah. Did you see the boy band documentary? The
I didn't know it existed until this came up. Now I want to see it because I'm a big fan of again the scam documentary.
Well, because, I was too old. I missed the Aaron Carter thing. I missed the
Mm,
Aaron Carter phase and he just passed. And
hmm
he is I would really, really love to hear what you think about him in this doc because he has probably the worst case of Stockholm syndrome I've ever seen.
Oh
It's
yeah,
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 he's the
yeah.
only one that defends him. I don't
hmm
know. It's
Well, it's like
very
I mean, it's very similar to we were talking about this before we got started. The surviving R. Kelly thing, that there are women who are clearly, by my definition, many people's definition, who were being abused by R. Kelly, who stood by him, because
yeah,
that's that. How do you get away with that unless you convince people that you're right and the world is wrong?
yeah. Also, I mean, I know you didn't follow them, but when I was younger, I mean, you used to see like on MTV these concerts, like the Coliseum. Like
Oh
I
no,
saw
I
these.
definitely I was aware of it and I saw the
Yeah,
movement. I just wasn't like I wasn't that, but no, you couldn't avoid it if you were like participating in popular culture back then. So I
and
just
then
yeah.
to think they were making $35 a day.
There's a great clip from behind the music from back in the day of TLC, and it's Left Eye from TLC, the dearly rest in peace Left Eye,
Yeah,
describing how even though they had a hit record, why they were all broke, and it's all this music industry math that happens that like makes sure that the artist gets the smallest piece. And then if you put scam, so just the basic math of the industry means that they were going to get scammed. Not even illegal things. But then you put illegality on top of that, it means you're going to get paid nothing. Because even in its best case scenario, if you're a new artist with your first album, if that album's a hit, the industry is designed to make sure you get paid the least.
and or the MC Hammer
Yeah,
of it all.
yeah.
And Whitney Houston, like her family stealing out from under her nose, her people stealing out from under her nose. MC Hammer, like, yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's no different than it's sort of similar to people who win the lottery. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean you know what to do with a lot of money. And
mhm,
certainly, I will see this from the Black community. Our schools have not raised us to learn how to even do things like generally to like even balance your bank account. Like we're not even raised with like that level of financial literacy. So
yeah.
that suddenly you're a dude from Oakland like MC Hammer or you're Whitney Houston, and you suddenly actually do get those millions of dollars
Yeah.
you don't even know who to trust to help you manage those millions of dollars. And often the person you trust is the person who is the first person you met who's like, I know how to do this. Trust me. And you go, okay. And also, that person often has managed other people's millions of dollars, but you don't know they're scamming from all those people.
And that's exactly. Remember, MC Hammer hired all of his friends, and that he was like trying to take care of all of his friends, and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, you need money, I'm gonna pay you to be my like shoe carrier or something, and
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
just
yeah.
got that big
Yeah.
entourage.
Yeah, no, I think and it's also the fact that like, and I always say that you see artists, especially pop artists, they get that 1,000-yard stare at some point in their career, like I'm going to be famous forever, and you're just or I'm going to be in the top of the charts forever. That's really what it is. I'm going to be at the top of the charts forever, and you're just not. You're just it's just like even if you stay in the industry, you're just not going to be at the top of the charts forever. And the minute you start to not be at that level, the money starts to go away pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's so abstract because you see people like, Jay-Z and Beyonce just bought that like, community college that they call a house. And you just are like,
I thought they actually bought a community college. I was like, what
Yeah, I
are
was
you?
like,
Oh,
that's
but
so
that,
nice.
it looks like their house. It literally looks like
yeah,
a community
no.
college, or maybe like a blood donation hospital or something.
Oh my
And
god.
and you think like, how, like I can't qualify that money in my brain. And I always
Hmm.
think that it's like, would Beyonce ever run out of money? Whitney Houston did,
Yeah.
and
I
and
always say every boxer ends up broke. Like no matter how famous a boxer is, Floyd Mayweather may be the only one who doesn't do that, but every boxer who is at some point on top of the world ends up broke,
yeah.
as far as I can tell. So
One of the saddest stories, Eddie Ruffin from one of the original
mm,
Temptations.
hmm
Oh man, that is a really sad story. And they same thing. Group, they were all taken advantage of. The Temps got like
yeah,
fractions of money
hmm
of all the
hmm
yeah.
Can I ask you something, Kamau? And you don't have to give a very direct answer to this, but have
I'd love
you
to.
have you as a creative, as talent, ever experienced like anything like this where you're like, I think I just got
Oh,
screwed?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
let's put this way. Even as a
You
stand-up
don't have to
comic,
name names.
every stand-up comic has a story of like, you told me you're going to pay me this, but you paid me this.
Mm.
Like that's, I mean, just on a basic level. But like, I don't even know if I wrote about this in the book. It was such a weird. There was a guy blew into San Francisco, and I just say that because suddenly this guy who nobody met before came into San Francisco and said he was starting a radio. What did he say? A radio station? Maybe he said internet radio station. It was at the time where you could say internet anything, and people thought it meant you were
Mhm.
smart.
Yeah.
He was a black guy. I'll give him credit for this. He was doing
Mm.
something new. Maybe it's why.
Okay.
Maybe this is why the scam didn't last that long. But
Mm.
he said he was starting some sort of internet radio station, and I got pulled into it by another stand-up comedian who have I forgiven him? I don't know. Who knows? But
Oh.
I got pulled into it, and suddenly I was the host of a radio show,
Oh my
and I
God.
worked for like 2 weeks on this thing to be the host of this radio show, and I interviewed some pretty successful people because it's like other people got pulled in because that guy's doing it, that person's doing it, that
Yep.
person's doing it, and then we looked up and suddenly like, hey, how come the door's locked today? Hey, I never got that money, and it was like at that point I remember telling people he's going to pay me whatever the money was going to pay me. It was a lot of money for me at that time, and I
Mm.
looked up one day and it was all gone. Now again, maybe because he wasn't a white guy, maybe that's why I didn't get to be long conned like other people.
But let me ask you, okay, with this specific situation, for example, do you really think, I mean, his idea was, I'm just going to con him and dip out and however, for however long I can make this last, or that he really was trying to start something legitimate and he just sucked at it?
No, I think I want to start I want to start boy bands is a real thing. Also, I want to make as much money as possible. I don't care if it's legal or not. Those things
Right.
are working hand in hand. I don't think it's
Yeah.
like I don't think it doesn't sound like to me that, especially when you say all his stories from childhood were lies. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this was a
Yeah.
person who was like, I don't want to say he got it. People want to go like Sam Bankman-Fried. I just got caught up. I don't know what happened. I don't buy that generally. So
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
get caught up for that long unless you have ill intentions. So yeah, I think two
Yeah.
things can be true. I think Trump scam was like it was real estate or is real estate. Like that's his
Yeah.
particular bailiwick. This guy's was boy bands
Yeah.
and pretend airplanes or
Yeah.
pretend airports.
I mean, he had in sync in album sales and tour revenue in 2000 alone. they made $267 million.
Jesus.
That doesn't include video revenue,
Mhm.
merch revenue. Though I have a Joey
Yeah.
Fatone in sync doll because he was the funny one, so that was the one I liked.
Yeah.
And I mean, that you give these guys $10,000. Not that $10,000 isn't a lot of money, but when you're
No, it's not.
selling
It's
out,
not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money when you're talking about
when you're
that.
selling out
Yeah.
It's
stadiums,
not a
you
lot.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah, we can say it's a lot of money if somebody just hands you $10,000 on the streets,
For
right?
but
nothing.
it's not a
Yeah.
lot of money when you're talking about with the money that they brought in. And I think, I
Yeah.
mean, this happens. This is not related, but I think about like if you had just done the thing correct, you would and not been like a creep and a scamster. You would be a living legend. You would
Yeah.
be an avatar of the business. It's the same way I think like Death Row Records was the same way. If you had just if Suge Knight just hadn't felt the need to be such a gangster all the time,
Right. Right.
Death Row Records would still be would
You
probably be
had
the
a good
biggest record
thing.
company in the world.
You had
Yeah,
a good thing
you
going.
had Tupac, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg in their
Yeah.
prime.
Yeah.
If you had just said,
Yeah.
"I'm gonna let them cook and not be a gangster," it would be the biggest record company on planet Earth.
You know, if you watch the documentary that came out a few years ago, it's called the boy band Con, the Lou Pearlman story. I mean, at the end of it, and actually throughout it, like people who knew him just kept saying, "But we just didn't understand why. He had lots of money, he had success. What is the why?" And I think, you know, this is Rabia and Ellyn solve the case. There isn't really a mystery here. We know exactly what he did. I mean, it's all well documented. He had also admitted to it. I think one of the whys is, why did he do it? I don't know if it's a personality disorder, whatever that hole is he's trying to fill. But I also wonder, where the hell did all that money go? It wasn't, hundreds and millions were never recovered. Lou, where's your money at, man? Where could it be? I don't even understand. Like, you think it's like in a Swiss bank? Like, where is it out there? He doesn't even have any heirs, I don't think.
No, I mean, I bet if we've all. I would say this. There's been times in my life where I found myself with money I didn't expect to have. Now it wasn't that much money. When you have money and you don't respect it, that money can go quickly and go
Yeah.
for ridiculous things. And also, there's probably, as somebody just said, there's probably somewhere there is a bank account with a number that nobody knows what it is, and it is just sitting there. Or in the Breaking Bad style, somebody's gonna buy a house and go into the basement of the house and go, this floorboard is weak, and suddenly
Yeah.
step through it and be like, oh my God, there's $300 million down here. I think
Yeah.
it is probably, I bet more of it is gone than you think, though. I bet more of it is just like,
You might be
like
right.
gone
Yeah.
through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that and I'm not just saying this because like being an artist, but I feel like everyone wants to, a lot of people want to like leave this earth, leaving something behind, whether it's, your work, advocacy work, or if it's art or whatever
Your
it
name
is.
on the side of a building. Yeah.
Yeah, something like anything. And a famous movie, whatever it is. And when you actually don't have an ability to create or do anything that would like leave a legacy yourself, right? Because he couldn't do anything. He was always kind of like a dollar short and a day late. Then he made his fortune on the backs of people who were artists, who could do things. I don't know. There's something really pathetic about that to me. Because again, I always look at people who have money and nobody to share it with. And I just think that's such a lonely existence. I always tell Lola, when Lola was like 8 years old, she asked me if we were rich or we were poor. And I said, we have everything we need. There's anything we don't want or need for anything. Because it's just, I can't, it's all just enough. I just think the greed was his literal downfall. And, they talk about how he was like an overeater. He would go out and eat these huge lavish meals, Rabia, when they talked about in the documentary, and how he, succumbed to a lot of addictions because he died of cardiac arrest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of a
And
heart
he
attack?
had a stroke or before that too. Yeah. He wasn't in great health. 62 is pretty young.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just all kind of that Moorish.
It was a sad
behavior.
life. It was
Yeah,
a sad
it is.
life.
It's
I
a
think
sad
we can
life.
agree. Kamau, I want to respect your time. We told you 90 minutes. We've had you here for 100 minutes. So-
You owe me my 10 minutes back. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'll give them to you when you come to Baltimore.
Okay.
All right. So we'll let you go, but we want to wrap up. Before we wrap up, we want folks to know where they can find you and what you're up to. And yeah, where can they find you online?
I mean, at this point, most of my online is happening on Instagram because I've left the company formerly known as Twitter. I mean, I'm still there,
Yeah.
just squatting on my name. But
Yeah.
Instagram is where I do most of my things, at Kamau Bell, and my website, wkamaubell.com. And yeah, go watch 1000% Me on. If you want like a lighter version of what I do, go watch 1000% Me on HBO or Max, wherever it's at. If you want a more intense version of what I do, go watch We Need to Talk About Cosby on Paramount Plus. And if you want a medium version of what I do, watch United Shades on whatever streaming platform. I think it's on, maybe it's on Max. I think it's on Max too. Oh, yeah, so there you go.
Any
and my
exciting
book.
any exciting project coming up that you're allowed to share? Or I know people are never allowed to share. You're probably working on some really cool stuff.
I'm not allowed to share anything. It's funny. I'm not allowed to share anything.
I get it. We get it. Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing this case to us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you something funny before we get off. I saw the email from your assistant that said you want to talk about this case, and I didn't remember the name because I wasn't really familiar with it. I spent half a day trying to research the crimes of Lou Rawls, and I did not understand what was going on.
Lou Rawls.
I was like,
please Please let there be no Lou Rawls crime. Did she write Lou Rawls? Was that her mistake?
No, it was not her mistake. But I had read the email, and like a week or two go by, and I was like, I don't know what come out of this. I'm embarrassed to ask him.
You don't know about Lou Rawls? No, I don't know about Lou Rawls either.
Poor Lou Rawls did nothing wrong. That poor man is clean as a whistle. I apparently, but
I'm glad you've clearly done the work to find out. You would know now if there was something wrong.
Yeah.
We hope we see you again. All right. Thank you so much, Kamau. And don't forget, you can find us at Rabia and Ellyn on Instagram and sometimes Twitter. And where can they find you, Rabia?
I am on, again, like Kamau, mostly on Instagram at Rabia Squared 2, the number 2. I still do exist on X. And I'm on Facebook as Rabia Chaudry.
And you can find our group on Rabia and Ellyn Solve the Case. We have a wonderful group. We talk about we talk about whatever true crime is going on. We talk about the episode, and we always take your suggestions. So please join us there. And if you want to leave us a SpeakPipe message, please do so at www.speakpipe.com/solvethecase. And speaking of websites, if you would like bonus content, ad-free content, watch parties, all of that fun stuff, you can find all of that content over on Patreon, www.patreon.com/Rabia and Ellyn. We have lots of fun things in store. We have Dan Bukatinsky coming back for a couple more things. Mm-hmm. And what else, Rabia?
Well, we're having a party on Patreon, but you can also follow us on our new YouTube channel. It's brand spanking new. So remember, go to YouTube and subscribe. Then you get to actually see us in action and what we look like every time we do this, and our guests, and it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Until next time, thank you so much. Love you, Rabia.
Love you too, Ellyn. Bye, guys.
Bye.